Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Where Work Meets Life. Today, we're live in the studio in LA talking about a very important issue. The issue is building awareness on child sex trafficking, how we can all make a difference. Please don't ostrich. Please take in this episode because it takes each and every one of us to make a difference. No matter how dark or inapplicable it seems to your life, the difference that each of us make has a broader impact on what I think is the most horrific issue facing our world. So essentially, I'm going to tell you that 2.5 years ago, I did 2 podcast episodes with Alan Smyth. He is the Executive Director of Saving Innocence. I'll let you tell more about what you do in a moment, Alan. But the interviews we did were about his book, Men Fight for Me. A fantastic book. I was able to read it 2.5 years ago, and it's now available in audio format. And our episodes back then were titled Calling All Men to Action, Let's End Sexual Exploitation and Trafficking. And those were episodes 25 and 26, if you want to tune in to our conversation there. Today, we're catching up on the latest trends around this heinous crime and introducing Alan's new audiobook version of Men Fight for Me. And we're also going to catch up with Conroy Kanter, producer of Trafficked, whose film premiered in 2017, and it was only the second film ever to premiere in front of the United Nations, and it received a standing ovation by 400 delegates. Absolutely amazing. It's had a powerful impact in the world, and we're going to discuss how she plans to continue using the film to build broader awareness, because it's all about building awareness so people can take action and have an impact. And where I come in, I became really interested in this topic earlier on. I wrote 2 psychological thrillers. This is my first one, A Losing Cadence. It's about an abduction, and it's about the broader issue of control of women, domestic violence, and trusting our early warning signs and intuition about dangerous partners. So that's one of the reasons I'm in LA. We're trying to get a TV series on its legs around these books. And I've really stepped in to make a difference on these topics, these dark but very important topics with these 2 today. So without further ado, I'm going to ask you first, Alan, tell us a little bit more about yourself and the why behind the work you do.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me back. It's an honor to be here. And of course, with the rock star Conroy, who has been doing great things out there in this topic. Alan Smyth, married to my lovely wife, Sharon. Now this summer will be 40 years, if you can believe that. And a son and a daughter. And our son and his wife had their first little one a year ago. So now I'm a grandpa for the first time, loving all of that. And I have the privilege and honor to be the executive director, as you said, of Saving Innocence. We're an anti-trafficking agency, about almost 15 years old, based here in Los Angeles. Our boots on the ground are here in LA, but we train and consult around the country from time to time. And our specialty for most of those 15 years has been working in the recovery and the restoration of child victims of sex trafficking. And we do cover all forms of human trafficking as of late, but that's been kind of our specialty in our niche, if you will. And what a heartbreaking reality that's in our world and in our country and in our cities and everywhere. And so what's the why behind it? I'm a dad with a daughter, and I have a son as well. Most of the young little ones are little girls for whatever reason. And once I learned about this heinous crime, I can't look away, and I can't go back. And I just was on a phone call with a friend a minute ago before this recorded, and I said, I'll never retire from this work. My role might change at Saving Innocence, but I can't walk away from those that are affected, and they've embedded themselves into my heart.
Oh, that is so beautifully put. Thank you for the work you do. And I know it's not always easy. It must be extremely difficult. And we talked last time on the episodes about how you take breaks from it at certain times to recover and restore. And yeah, you're just amazing. So Conroy, let's hear from you. What are you up to lately, and what's your why behind the work around Trafficked?
Oh, thank you, Laura. I'm happy to be here. And I agree with Alan. Once you see something, you can't put it away. I mean, you have to make a difference in whatever I can do. I have found through the power of film is a huge medium because we have in our film Traffic, we have 4 different scenarios and it follows these young women. Our women are 18, but the average age into this world is 12. So when you hear that's the average, you know what that means. That 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds up to 17. I mean, it's just heart-wrenching. And so I toured with the film to bring awareness to different groups to help them raise money. And then the pandemic happened. So we kind of shut down because we couldn't have large groups, it just, it was awful. And I know there were so many children that, really suffered during that time and it's hidden away. So now we're looking to re-edit and get the word out or the movie out even more, airlines, maybe schools, do some sort of an education because I think that young children need to know it's a little bit stranger danger. You don't want to terrify children, but there are consequences if you're a runaway and if you don't have anyone to go to. If your parents are a source of safety, then maybe a counselor at school, there's another or a neighbor. And we, hopefully you watch the film and you can relate to one of our characters, if they look like your child or your next door neighbor or your cousin.
Absolutely. And I keep saying every high school student should watch Trafficked. I think it's a really important education on how this business works.
And it's not something that you just want to say, oh, that happens in another country far, far away. It happens right here. And Alan is on the forefront. I know you're working with different organizations, the sheriff's department,
Yeah.
I wish every city had an Alan Smyth helping.
Well, thank you. But it's so much bigger than me. And we have a number of survivors who are the real all-stars who inform our work. And LA does have a really great model that a lot of the other states are looking at from time to time. There's a really great partnership with the law enforcement agencies and service providing agencies, the DCFS and others. And, in the perfect scenario, everyone is checking their ego and their agenda at the door, and we're coming together saying, what's best for kids and how do we do it? And so we're really honored to be part of that team.
It is very much a team, and I'm glad that other states are looking at how you're doing it and learning from it. And up in Canada, we have the issue widely as well. Lots of busts, lots of sex trafficking rings. And so my question is, can you define for us, Alan, so what is sex trafficking? What's sexual exploitation? How do they relate? And what are the latest trends going on that we need to know about?
Yeah, there's a federal definition that sounds like a federal definition, and it uses words like force, fraud, and coercion. And so in essence, it's exchanging something of value, usually in this case it's sex, for something else of value in terms of money or food or drugs or shelter. And it's trafficking when someone is forcing you to do that. When there's a third party, that victim is under third party control, and they don't have a choice. There is no choice whatsoever. They're being forced to do what they're doing. And when they become available, in this case sexually, in some way, shape, or form for a customer, then it's trafficking. There's a trafficker, and then there's the trafficked, to coin your movie title, victim. And so all of that is exploitation. There's certainly exploitation that isn't yet trafficking. But when that third party trafficker, controller, is forcing someone to be somewhere and receiving money for some sort of sexual exploitation or effort, then it becomes trafficking. And it's usually, according to the definition, through force, physical force, oftentimes violent force, sometimes lethal force, fraud or coercion. And it can look a lot of different ways underneath that umbrella.
Oh, wow. So what have been the trends? I mean, how was the pandemic and the post-pandemic period? What's happening? Is the issue expanding? Is it retracting a bit because of all the efforts from people like you and Saving Innocence? What's happening?
Yeah, that's a great question. The pandemic was an interesting, to say the least, phenomenon around our world. We know that so much exploitation and trafficking is happening online. The internet, as great as it is in so many ways, is also incredibly brutal in so many ways. And it basically poured rocket fuel on a bonfire. And so when everything was shut down and schools were shut down, now you have millions upon millions of adolescents, many of them already vulnerable, sitting on the internet, largely unsupervised, either doing school or playing games. And now there's predators that are also lurking in the internet. The FBI said at one point there's at least 900,000 predators online at any given moment. And that number actually honestly seems a little low. It's an older stat. And so here's your 12 or 13 or 14-year-old sitting there playing their games or chatting with somebody else, and then somebody else pops into the game or whatever, and the picture looks like they're 15, but it's really a 35-year-old, and luring that young one into a relationship, and they exchange information, and she thinks it's a boyfriend or a friend, a girlfriend, and it's really somebody with bad intentions the entire time. So the pandemic put all that on steroids because there were so many more unsupervised kids on the internet. So how is it going right now? It probably depends on which city, which state, which country you're talking about. There's certainly lots of great progress along the way. And there's more and more people talking about the issue. The big movie that came out last summer and things that Conroy has done, platforms like you, there's more and more documentaries and things that are happening, which are raising awareness, which is a good thing for sure. What we're butting up against oftentimes in this city and in this state is that the leadership of our city and our state and various elected offices are making decisions that aren't helpful towards the work that we're doing. They're getting bad information, in my opinion, and they're dismantling some of the laws that were already in place for their various political reasons. And so that combined with the law enforcement issues that have happened over the last few years, and there's a sort of this idea of defunding the police, and somehow the thought is less police is better. And I would say better police is better, not less police. And so now they're forced to make decisions on where they're going to allocate their human resources within the law enforcement world. This particular topic and this particular population doesn't raise very high on the overall priorities necessarily, because it's largely invisible and it's happening to people that don't vote and all the various other things that you might say. So it's been a real challenge, honestly, and frustrating.
Oh my goodness. And I think there's some misconceptions though around who is vulnerable to trafficking and what types of vulnerabilities lead our young people, our children, our teens to be trafficked. So I'd like to hear from each of you on that in terms of what are the vulnerabilities and misconceptions about, is it people who are in a state of poverty, or could it be anyone? So do you want to answer first?
Okay. But no, I was just thinking of what Alan said. It's the demand, supply and demand. If there's not a demand, and it's pedophilia, it's men wanting to have sex primarily with children. And that's the issue. And unfortunately, you can't tell that someone has this disease, because I really feel it's a disease. You can't tell by just looking at someone, and it could be a professional person, and it's a husband and a father. And the more pornography, I think the stats on child pornography, it's 500,000 new uploads a week. I mean, that's just horrific. And once the pornography comes in, that changes the brain waves, and then the desire to have sex with a child, is increased, and then they act out on it. I mean, it's a serious problem, but you're right, because they're children and they don't vote. I mean, we have to have stronger penalties for the buyer, for the John, for the trafficker, and it's never a child's fault. I was thinking there was a show in the early 2000s, and it was kind of like To Catch a Predator, where they would set it up, I think with Stone Phillips. Why aren't there more films or television shows I think it was a Dateline show, and it really, they pretended to be a 13-year-old, and then they arrested these men when they showed up.
I think the other part of it is it's also very much an economically driven crime. It's good old-fashioned capitalism. Conroy mentioned demand, supply and demand. And so it's an incredible asterisk, brutal sort of economic business model, if you will, because a trafficker can control someone who's vulnerable, and someone who's vulnerable typically is a child, a young one, typically coming from a broken home, typically coming with other needs that are happening, the other vulnerabilities, poverty, other kinds of things that are happening, some prior sexual abuse. Typically, our survivors have been abused sexually, oftentimes way before the trafficker ever entered the picture. And that sent them down a road of vulnerability. And now this trafficker sees that, this predator. It's important to just use that word for a moment, predator. If you Google any sort of National Geographic show about, the jungles in Africa or something, and you'll find one that says the predators, and you'll see a lion slinking down in the tall grass. He's downwind, there's a strategy, and he's waiting for that herd of zebras to run by. And he doesn't jump on that first strong, confident, aware leader. He waits for the little one who gets separated from the pack, the weak link, if you will. And there's his prey. And so there's predators online and everywhere at schools and malls and bus stops, and they're not looking for the strong, confident, and aware teen or younger. They're looking for the weak, timid, and unaware one. And now he preys on that one and starts telling her everything that she's ever wanted to hear. He's offering security. He's offering protection. He's offering the things that she really feels like she needs in her life circumstances. And then he turns it into a business model. He's probably making $200,000 a year, tax-free cash, for every one that he's controlling. And so what happens if he controls 2, 3, 4, or 5? Now you've got some 19-year-old trafficker, and that's all he has seen in his neighborhood is the older boys doing this. He's going to go get a job at McDonald's and make, $8 an hour. I don't think so. He's going to get $1 million of cash. So there are certainly pedophiles involved, for sure. That's one piece of the profile. But there's also others that aren't, in terms of buyers, there's also others that aren't necessarily pedophiles per se. They're walking in with their entitlement and some extra money in their pocket and some loneliness and some addiction and all the things that they've brought to the table. And they may or may not be looking for a minor, but if a minor shows up, it's like, I already paid my money. Okay, let's do this. But it's not necessarily pedophilia per se as the motive, although it does exist.
Can it be peer pressure, right? So Jeffrey Epstein and the different people he brought out to that island and stuff. So it's being part of the gang almost mentality?
I think all of the above.
Yeah.
It's all of those things. The buyers could look like anyone.
Yeah.
I usually, when I'm talking to just regular people, I say, you know a buyer. Like there's someone that's a sex buyer. And they get, well, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And so it's the guy next door, it's the dentist, it's the Little League coach, it's the pastor, it's the cop. It's a regular person who has gone down a path. Typically pornography is the on-ramp. They've become addicted to sexual content in some way. And you know how it is with any addiction, you need a little bit more to get the same high.
Yeah.
And so just looking at the pictures and the videos isn't enough. Then you have to get to more violent and typically younger sites on the screen. And then pretty soon that same addicted, broken man typically says, well, I'd like to be in the physical presence. How do I do that? I'd like to buy a real person. And it's not hard to find if you're looking for it.
On the dark web, right?
On the dark web or on the street corner or whatever it might be. And not even on the dark web. All the popular social media sites that you know about, that your kids are looking at. There are people being sold right now on those sites.
Oh my God.
Yes. And I mean, it was a great when Backpage got shut down. And that was where basically it was soliciting, what do you want? We can get it for you. Your book is so informative. I mean, I just enjoyed listening. I like your voice, listening to your Audible, but you bring in other people. And I remember that in one of the chapters, a bust and the man's, I think, brother-in-law was involved in it. Shocking.
It was actually his father-in-law, which was heartbreaking on a number of levels. Yeah. Otherwise upstanding family, and went down this path and got busted.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. And so much trauma in their past. I think the trauma that they've had in their lives, it ends up coming out in this form if the trauma is untreated.
Yeah. No, absolutely. The same conditions which produce a young victim of sex trafficking, all the vulnerabilities, those same conditions are producing the young traffickers. They're growing up in the same neighborhoods oftentimes. They also don't know who their dad is. They also have a mom who's addicted to drugs. They also are sleeping in a car. They're also forced to raise some money to feed the family. And then they see the older boys in the neighborhood doing all this stuff. and they go down a path. I'm not making excuses for them, but if we're trying to understand the psychology of who's doing this and why they're doing it, we have to give attention to the conditions that are creating it. And it's all of those poverty and vulnerabilities that are happening that create these really poor choices.
And I've had screenings where before the movie starts, I say, if something triggers you and you need to step out, I will meet you outside. And I was in Nashville, Tennessee, and this young woman in her early 20s started crying and walked out. And I went outside, and she said, when I was 9 years old, my mother sold me to my uncle's friends to feed her drug habit. Her mother was a drug addict, and that's how they made money. A 9-year-old child. And then, like Alan says, we see so many things that you can't unsee them. And it's here and it's happening. And, just look around. If you see something that doesn't feel right, report it. There are numbers. We've got the hotlines. And we'll get that number for you, Laura, to report.
Yeah.
See something, say something.
We'll share it in the show notes. We'll share it as widely as we can. So men fight for me.
Yeah.
So we talked about that 2.5 years on this podcast, and now you have it in audio format.
Yeah.
Tell us why you ended up doing that.
Well, the book was written, and it was a real passion project, and there's so many voices, and there's 5 or 6 really prominent, amazing survivors that jumped into it. They said, there's nothing like this for men. We're so excited that you're doing this for men. Co-authored it with Jessica, who's a great friend and survived 10 years of child trafficking herself. And so we felt really good about the book. And then I listened to 2 of these amazing lived experience experts, as we like to refer to them as survivors. Harmony and Rebecca are in the book, lending their story. And I listened to their books, telling their own life story. And it was their voice reading and it was so powerful. Maybe partly because I knew them personally, but I thought, well, what would it be like if we could do an audio version and get everybody? So all these survivors came through the course of a period of time to a friend's recording studio. There's a bunch of men later in the book that I asked what is their picture of masculinity? How do they live their life? And they came in there, most of them. And so it just became this conversation, this chorus of a bunch of voices talking about this. And really happy with how it turned out, and really grateful for my friend who put it together for us. And now it's just people that drive a lot or go for long walks or whatever it is. And particularly the target audience is men, although it's for everybody. Most men I know don't really sit down and read a good book very often. That's not really who they are per se. And so this is just providing one more way for them to consume this information. And it's available everywhere that an audiobook might be available. It's on Audible, as you mentioned, the Amazon company, but it's everywhere else too. So if you're looking for the next audiobook, go find this, and it'll be pretty powerful.
And I think every man should read this book or listen to this book. I think it's a must. I think it'll build a better overall society, stronger families. It'll just help raise this important awareness. So,
and I know we said this a couple years ago, Laura, but just for the new audience, the title was important. It was inspired when I heard one of these amazing survivors who's in the book telling her story. And she said in the middle of her trauma, and I was in the room, she said it. She said, I needed someone to fight for me. I could no longer fight for myself. And that just lit a fire inside of me. It's like, I'll fight for you. And I'll see how many good men I can get to fight for you also. And so that came to the book. She didn't say men fight for me. She said, I need someone to fight for me. But then we wanted to laser target the title. And that was showing up in searches. I've had a lot of guys around the country contact me saying, I was looking for my next book as a man, like men stuff. And they found this book and read it, and it really transformed them.
Well, I'm going to put a challenge out there. If you're a man and you're listening, or if you're a woman and you have a man in your life, I think some of you might, I think you should encourage them to listen to this, challenge them to listen to this, and then debrief it. And you'll learn about this dark underbelly of society. But if we let the darkness breed and continue, it'll become more and more dark. And that makes our world a worse place to be.
Yeah. Let's go. Challenge accepted.
Let's go. Challenge. Come on. So, Conroy, let's move the focus to Trafficked. So the film came out 2017. I know you did a lot of promotion. We did lots of promotion in Canada as well, brought up Patrick Duffy, had a whole bunch of events in 2019. I think we raised a lot of awareness. A lot of people in my own city of Calgary didn't even realize it was happening in our own backyard. So I want to know what you're planning to do next with the film. and how people can watch it, because I think everyone needs to watch it, starting at age, let's say 16 and up. But what are you doing now with it?
Well, and that's what happened, during the pandemic. It kind of shut everything down. It is currently on Amazon Prime, so you can find it there, starring Ashley Judd, Patrick Duffy. We've got a nice cast, and it's based upon true stories. It's a brothel that was outside of Houston, and how they were bringing in girls you know, from Mexico, from different countries. And, it was really eye-opening. It was a difficult movie to make, and it's a difficult movie to watch, but I think it's very important. So we are looking to take a few scenes out and, get it on airplanes. I think that is a great place to watch it and become aware, especially when you're going to different countries, and it's worldwide. I mean, one of our girls is from India, but I mean, it's a huge problem in Italy and Spain and Thailand, and I mean, it's everywhere. Wherever you have a demand, there's the supply. And I just really feel strongly about having some type of a school awareness project, even starting as young as elementary school, just the stranger danger plus.
I've been having those conversations with our 13-year-old daughter about this, and she's not ready to see Trafficked. But I tell you, as soon as she turns 16, even 15, I would show it to her. And our oldest son at 15 saw Trafficked when it came to Calgary in 2019. And it really moved him. I think he'll never forget it.
And I've had young men that are friends of my son say, we were going out to a party and they wanted to go to a strip club, and one of the boys said, "No, this isn't right. I'm not going to do that. I saw I saw Trafficked, and I'm not going to partake in that." So we need more young men to stand up and say, "No, this isn't right. We're not going to do that. That's not a party for us." So yeah, we can all do a little bit of something, and I think studios can also help. This is happening, now that Jeffrey Epstein, that show, Filthy Rich, came out on Netflix. It really got more people thinking this happens, and you can't just sweep it under the rug. We really have to look at it and make a difference where we can.
And I think that there's somewhat of a misconception, though, that it's mainly an international issue. So it's in other countries, and they'll bring in the girls from other countries to here. But I do think that it can happen locally through modeling scams, through Romeos, to any of our daughters. So can you speak to that, Conroy, and how your film exemplifies that?
Yes, that's what we did. We have a scenario of a young girl caught in a modeling scam that seems legitimate, and she basically gets kidnapped. And we have an old boyfriend, a jilted boyfriend that gets angry, and he sells the girl that said no to him. And then it's also young children just wanting to be loved and taken care of, and that predator is a master manipulator that just lures them in, and once you're in, it's hard to get out. It's so heart-wrenching. And I love hearing in your book, Alan, the survivors that really speak about how they were coerced and how they got out too. So it's wonderful that you're getting it out there.
Absolutely. I just love the work that both of you are doing and how you complement each other in your work. So we have some challenges going forward. This challenge is a great challenge. And a worldwide challenge. So what are the biggest challenges that we face in continuing to address this issue, Alan?
I think one of the things you just mentioned is that, generally speaking, most people think it's a problem far away. And boy, that sounds terrible, but what can I do? It's 10,000 miles away. And so a lot of the remedy to that is podcasts and documentaries and movies and conversations. No, this is happening right here, all 50 states. Maybe every single zip code. I'm not sure about that exactly, but it's a massive problem right here in the United States. I know you and a lot of your audience is in Canada. And so that's challenge number one, raising awareness to the gravity of the situation and what's happening. And then number two, as far as I'm concerned, is our society is so much momentum going down this path. And we have to somehow change course. It takes a long time to change course. And there's been a lot of efforts trying to get a lot of the porn sites shut down, and certainly adding age verification, some of those kinds of things. I mean, just the pornography industry in general is just billions and billions and billions of dollars on eyeballs and views and clicks. And what people don't know is that most of the people you see on those screens don't want to be there. They're being forced or coerced in some way to be an actor in that video. A lot of them. We've had survivors of trafficking that were trafficked into that motel room or that movie set. They didn't have a choice. Then they get violated all day long by 8 or 10 men, and it makes its way up onto a porn site, and it's pornography. And so we have to turn this country around and the world around and press a reset button and say, no, this is not okay. This is not on our watch. And my little lane, my little niche, because I'm a man, it's fairly rare to have men working this side of the problem if you're not a cop. My lane through this book and conversations is the biggest part of the problem is men. We're most of the buyers, men are most of the sellers. And so we need a revolution of good, strong men to stand up and confront those weak-minded men who are following a path that's causing destruction and harm. We need good men to stand in the way of it. And I love whoever it was that said, we're not going to do that. We're not going to the strip club. We need good, courageous leadership from men saying, no, guys, we're not doing that. And here's why. Well, I'm going to do it anyway. No, I'm not going to let you. We need some good, strong confrontation and say, we can be better. We need to be better. That's a challenge for us to make sure that happens.
And we need to, not be afraid to speak out against others. And I hope that my sons do that. I know my husband's done that on business trips when they want to go to strippers. No, disgusting. We're not doing that, But then he gets disgusted at others that do. But I hope that my sons, as they go through that peer pressure and the partying, that they stand up against this, because it's absolutely horrific. And again, we really want to raise awareness on it and make this conversation a conversation that happens at dinner tables. That's not, oh, that's dark. That's, let's just ostrich and forget about that. We need to talk about it in families.
Well, there's an age-appropriate conversation to be had. And obviously, you're not going to talk to your 10-year-old the same way you might talk to your 18-year-old. There's an age-appropriate conversation of boundaries, of stranger danger. I think you said that term earlier, helping a 12-year-old understand some of the basic stuff that you would normally do with most young kids about boundaries. And we can help kids understand and help them keep safe. Like I said, the goal for parents is to raise strong, confident kids and aware kids. Traffickers aren't going to go around the strong, confident, aware young. There's too many soft, unaware kids that are going down whatever path that gets offered to them. So parents, raise strong, confident children. That's the best thing you can do for your family.
Absolutely, because I see a trend when they don't have confidence. When young girls don't have confidence and they don't have self-esteem, then they're just so dang vulnerable.
And again, not to beat the drum too much, a lot of a young girl's lack of confidence comes from a missing dad. The moms are great. The moms are doing all they can do. Way to go, moms. Keep doing that. You're holding it together, moms. If we can get more men to engage and build into their young girls as they're growing up, that'll give them the extra layer of confidence, and they go without that. They're going to either have a blessing or a wound the rest of their life because dad did what he did or didn't do what he did. And thanks, moms, for doing a great job. Men, we got to be better. And it's going to make a massive change when that happens.
Absolutely. We need more authentic masculinity. And I love that term.
Yeah.
And in a quick nutshell, what is authentic masculinity?
Well, my little working definition, my son, when he was 5, and a couple of buddies with their kids, we started a little father-son, thing together. And we thought the first thing we have to do is define what is a real man. What's an authentic man? Well, we have to give our young boys and our young men a roadmap. Here's the target. Here's what you're shooting for. And so we come up with 4 little definitions. One, he accepts responsibility. An authentic man practicing authentic masculinity leans into and accepts the responsibilities in front of him. He leads courageously. It's going to take a courageous 15-year-old to say to his other 15-year-olds, we're not looking at that porn crap, and we're not going to the strip club, and here's why. I'm not going to let you. It's going to take courageous leadership on social media. And as men get older to their career out in the workplace, if you're an elected official, it's going to take courage to stand up against all these things. He lives a life of service. An authentic man is here to serve, here to give, not take. One of the gentlemen in the book answered that question. He said, "But a man takes, he loses all credibility." And so we need a bunch of men to go out there and serve their family, serve their kids, their wives, their community. And then the last pillar is he understands that who he is more important than what he does. So pick whatever profession, whatever job you want to do. Go be an athlete, a business person, a teacher, whatever. What's more important than that is who you are on the inside internally, who you are when no one's looking. And so we defined anyone who is practicing those 4 pillars, and you could add a few more of your own if you wanted, is practicing authentic masculinity rather than the cheapened, diminished, watered down version that we see played out in front of us all day long in all walks of life. So that's authentic masculinity according to me and my buddies. And I offer it for all you guys who are looking to raise your boys and you're looking for something to hang on to. It's been great for us.
And I have good news. As a psychologist, I think the things that you've talked about include being a servant, having a servant's heart. And I see that in both of you. And I think one of the greatest antidotes to our mental health crisis is serving others. If you can serve others, it'll help you feel better, be better, and be more mentally well. So there's a huge bonus in doing all of this. Yeah. So what's one thing that we can do to make a difference? I'm going to ask Conroy this question first.
Just be aware. Know that it's going on. If you have, if you can be a mentor to a child, if we can teach our children to speak up, if boundaries are being crossed, and like that friend of my son's, he said, "No, we're not going to do that." Be a leader. But the main thing is awareness. And if you see something that doesn't feel right, speak up.
Excellent. Thank you. Alan.
It certainly starts with awareness. We can't expect a world to change something it doesn't know exists.
Yeah.
They don't understand it. So it absolutely starts there. I would build on that and say awareness just for the sake of awareness doesn't really help that much. You have to act on it. So I would couple that with action. Now that you've seen something, now that you've read the book or listened to it or seen a movie or whatever, now go do something. Get off the couch. Get in the game. And well, what do I do? Okay, well, Google anti-trafficking agency near me. Find out, there's probably one somewhere. Find out, go to their website, see how many staff they have. 8, 6, 10, 20, whatever it is. Send them all a handwritten note. Thanks for the work that you're doing. That'll mean the world to them. You can do that. You can do that today. Next time you go to the grocery store, buy a little Starbucks gift card for everybody. Send it to them. Thanks for your work. You can do little things like that. Get involved, do something, find out what the needs are that they have. Is it the holidays and they're looking to give gifts away to the ones that they're serving? Great. Get a list of things, add them to your Christmas shopping list. You can do something. So, but it has to start with the mentality is I'm going to do something. I'm going to be part of the solution. And once you do that, the sky's the limit.
The ripple effects are huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the little things that make a big difference when we have hundreds of thousands of people doing them. And my biggest audience is actually in the US. And I hope that this reaches as many Americans as possible and that each of you take action, whether it's buying Alan's book for someone that you care about, whether it's reaching out to your local sex trafficking organization. I think those are great things. Watching Trafficked, recommending that your high school screens Trafficked for the high school students and you have a conversation about it. I think all of those are such important things. My final question, which I ask all guests, is if you could have one wish for a better world when it comes to this issue, what would it be? Conroy.
That every child has a happy, healthy, safe environment in childhood. I mean, just wouldn't that be wonderful?
Absolutely. We'd have such a better world without all these wars and horrific situations and suffering in the human souls. Alan.
Well, I'm going to stay in my lane and I'm going to say my wish is that generations of men would wake up and live differently. And men, you have so much strength and power in this world. You need to channel it for good. The cheap, diminished, watered down version, you were meant for so much more. And so my wish is that generations of middle-aged men, young boys would see the world in a way where they can add value, not take from it, And as it relates to this topic, there's plenty to do.
Mm-hmm. Beautifully put. Well, we've covered a lot of territory today. I'm so appreciative that we were able to do this episode live and touched on both Men Fight For Me, the book, now the audiobook, as well as Trafficked, the film that's very much still relevant, a few years later, and will continue making a difference. Thank you, Alan Smyth, for being who you are with a servant's heart. Thank you, Conroy Kanter, for being the amazing soul you are. And with that, I wish everyone a wonderful day, and please share this episode with others who need to hear these messages. Stay well. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Where Work Meets Life. If you found this content valuable, please rate and review the episode and share with others who may benefit. Visit me on my website at drlaura.live and sign up for my monthly e-newsletter full of tips and resources. I'm also a passionate keynote speaker and would be delighted to speak with you on your speaking needs. Stay well.